Okay guys, we are just going to do some mat work today. The punch defense is something that you could just practice so much at, right? The only a tip that I could add if you had a partner real fast is that maybe you're in your stance and your partner moves around a little bit and you have to follow, and then when you see that punch coming, like you don't just know that it's going to happen, okay? You're not just standing in a stagnant. So if you can practice that a little bit, right? That would be good because you do have to, while you're moving, notice if he's moving, we're both going to move left. We never want to crisscross our feet. That will make it impossible for you to do a punch defense, right? Because on the crisscross, if he punches, I'm just going to fall. So whatever direction you move that foot first, and notice my head stay pointed. Sometimes as we move, we tend to get very tall, you know. I'm sure most of you have watched some UFC fights by now, if you haven't noticed, go watch when people get knocked out in UFC fights. It's normally when they start to get tall and go backwards. And it lets that punch land at the most extended, powerful place. You know, so we talked about yesterday why we want to go in, right? And the reason we want to go in is even when I mess it up, his punch is coming. If I can catch it there, or even if I can catch his punch here, this is not where he's wanting to make contact with the punch. So if you can catch it on the way, oh man, I don't like saying if you can catch it because you don't want to be catching it. But if you get caught with it on the way in, it's much better than on the way back. Okay guys, today we are going to look at going from the side control position to the mounted position. Because there's always two things that we want to be looking at from an offensive standpoint. I should say three things. One, maintaining. Two, submitting. Three, advancing. So these are the three things that we're always kind of looping in a circle. When I'm looking at going from side control to the mount, what I'm really concerned with is dealing with his arm on the side that I'm on, okay? So if I'm on this side of him in side control, this is going to be the very important arm that I'm going to have to deal with to mount in the most skillful way. That being said, probably for most of you that have trained already, you haven't even thought about it because this person on the bottom might not be the most skillful either. But we never want to be doing things for the least skillful practitioner, for it to work on the least skillful practitioner. We want to be thinking about will this still work at top level world championship type competition? So what am I saying about more skillful and less skillful? Let's pretend that Professor Alex and I are both white belts. He's under here freaking out like a crazy man. And then when he stops, he can't breathe anymore. So I just go like this. And it works. And it works for all of us for such a long time. Yes, Professor? You know? But when he can calm down a little bit and be okay with being in side control, it's not going to work anymore because as I step over, it's going to leave space for the guard. What am I saying? I don't deal with this arm. So as I come over to the mount, look at all that space. His knee is connected to his elbow and he has a very good escape. I just gave it to him. So, dealing with the arm. Here we go, okay? The first thing, there's two ways to do it. I can do it with my hip or my knee. Let's start with my hip. So just as we faced the legs, we sat on our hip and faced his head, we're going to do the same thing, but face the legs. Before I do that, however, I'm going to walk towards his legs. So my hand is going to block. I'm going to turn his legs away from me, and I'm going to walk towards them. What that did, notice, his elbow pulled away from his body here. So as that happened, now I can sit on my hip, putting my hip inside of his elbow, and I can now start to scoop back and scoop his head. Okay? So that my knee is all the way up high by his head. Okay? So that, can you pull your right arm down? No, it runs into my hip. From this position, I come under, drive a little forward, putting the pressure on his arm, knee on the chest, slide it over, kick the floor. And here I have a nice mount where he was never able to get this elbow inside. One more time. Here we are. Turn the legs, walk the legs, okay? And sit on the hip. Scoot my butt back, and then get on my knee. Cup. Look, he's not gonna stay turned like this. He's gonna turn back. Control, head down, knee on. Now look, I'll spin around this way a little bit. Where it can get tricky sometimes is how do we get this foot to the floor? My knee hits the mat, and now I'm gonna kick my hip down so that my foot comes across nicely. So guys, there is one more way to do this. It's without sitting on the hip. Generally, I prefer to do it without sitting on the hip, especially when I'm a bigger guy and I'm training with bigger guys, and whenever I feel a little more vulnerable sometimes when I start to sit on my hips. How do you feel, Professor?
Sometimes, for sure.
Sometimes, right? I like to stay on my knees, so
yeah.
Worst case scenario, I might have to pass their guard again, but I don't end up on the bottom from a big, strong person's big bridge, okay? So, here we are. I turn his legs, okay? Just like we did before. And now look, I'm just gonna take this knee down towards the hip. And then I'm gonna slide that knee up his back so that I end up in the same position without sitting on my hip. Both are useful, but you know, sometimes one, sometimes the other. Let's just do that part again so that you can see it, and then I'll finish it off, okay? So remember, the first thing I like to do is turn these legs, because now I know there's no escape from here because his legs are turned the wrong way. I turn my hip, but just my knee hits his lower back and butt area. Slide the knee up. The most common mistake that people make is they stop right here, and here Professor can move a little bit and then pull that elbow back in. And that I don't like. So, making sure, turn, knee, slide, 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 so that my knee is very high. Can you move a little bit?
No, not at all.
Stuck. So even when he moves a little bit, it's not enough. Hand in, head down. Just like before. All right, guys, 1, 2, 3.